Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 5 demo for the piece I call Krampus Takes a Break. So in 2016, I did this piece here where I sort of redesigned Santa for fun in time for the holidays, and then the next year I was like, what am I going to do? Let's do Mrs. Claus. She's got this awesome hot chocolate gun and this big mug on her back. I just loved just making it kind of berserk. And then in 2018, I did the elves because that sort of rounds out that gaggle of characters because I'm not going to draw a reindeer. So when it came to this year, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And while I was sitting with my kids watching the Aquabats, the Krampus episode came on and I thought, okay, let's do a Krampus. So even though the Krampus is usually really scary and really fun to draw because you can make him super scary and gnarly, I wanted to keep with the vibe of the other three pieces and just have it be fun and lighthearted. So I had to start redesigning the Krampus with that in mind, and I also kind of wanted to do a very different body than what he's usually depicted with. He's usually thinner, more demonic and like devil-like, and I wanted to kind of take him a little bit more of a, not really like an abominable snowman route, because I didn't want him to be white and I didn't want him to be, I don't know, just kind of like big and fluffy and round. I instead wanted to try and capture this thing where he's still got that small head and he's almost more like a big fat pyramid, or kind of like a Hershey Kiss or something like that. And so that's where I went with this design. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I sat down to do this, I didn't think I was going to have time to get this done. And I also didn't think I was going to arrive at a Krampus design that I enjoyed. And it turned out I did both. I got it done, and in the middle of it, I really kind of liked the way he turned out. So let's talk about his design while he's being sketched here. So he's always depicted as being hooved and having a collection of branches. Oh, by the way, you're going to keep seeing the elves pop in and out, and that's just because I was using them for like size reference and reusing backgrounds and the snow so that I kept everything really consistent, just as a reasoning as why they keep popping in and out. So he usually has a collection of birch branches that he uses as a switch to beat kids, and he's usually got horns and a long tongue and a basket on his back that he like throws the kids in. He also usually has chains, but I omitted the chains this time, only partially because I didn't feel like drawing chains, but also just because I didn't really want to try and cram everything in. I wanted him to just have his own vibe at the same time. So what we've got here, I at one point was going to throw lederhosen on him as well, and then after I googled Krampus to try and find just reference of what Krampus is supposed to look like, I saw some people had already done that, and I was like, okay, so that joke's been done, so I won't do that. You can see here I had some problem trying to sort out the way those hooves, those weird legs were going to be, but I did eventually get that worked out, which you'll see happen eventually. So with him, I just wanted him to look like he was super stoked. He was going to be helping Santa this year instead of being an asshole to kids, but I guess he's kind of a necessary evil, because if you don't completely destroy the lives of kids, then how are they ever going to behave, am I right? So anyways, we've got here Krampus. He's got that big shape that I was talking about. His head is really small. It's almost like he's got kind of a long curled neck, but it's all fur and meat in there. And then he's got these little pants on with this cross strap where he can hold his basket. And instead of having the basket where he throws the kids in, he's putting presents in there this year. So all in all, I like the way he came out. I think that he's got a fresh vibe. I've never drawn Krampus before, but probably always have thought about it. Probably, like, I don't know what I've thought. I've always thought about drawing, I constantly think about drawing Krampus, and so I finally got to do it here with this one. Matching the style of the other pieces was actually harder than I thought, because by now I had forgotten what the brush was that I used. So you can see me here trying out a bunch of different brushes, like, oh crap, what was that brush that I used? It was deliberately messy at the time, and I was like, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, and you see me going through a few of them here, but then ultimately I ended up going back to the turpentine brush because I know it well, and I could get some of the messiness that I wanted, the sort of see-through qualities. Although I will admit I didn't do that as much as I did in the Santa one. The Santa one was the one that was like, well, it was first, so it just kind of naturally happened. And then since every piece after that has been trying to recapture that, it starts over time losing a little. Like, to be honest, it loses a little. So I think that Krampus has a good design, but I think the execution on making it look like it's the exact same materials and treatment, I don't think it's quite as good as some of the other ones. But again, like, not to get onto the negative stuff, I think that ultimately it came out really cool, and I like the way he looks. Other aspects of this piece that were part of trying to get the look right were like the blue lines set to multiply, and the snow, and the watercolor paper texture that gets put on, and some of the other little details are all a part of that. I, for this, have imported the background that I used in the other ones, and the snow from the other ones, the texture from the other ones, the frame from the other ones, so that we can just try to keep as many things consistent as possible. Now, dealing with these messier brushes in order to try and get some of that look is a real pain in the ass when you're working with all this fur, all these little pointy elements, because those brushes don't really like behaving and sort of getting into those crevices. So there was a lot of overpaint and then erasing with just like a clean brush. So for the eraser part of it, it was just like either the solid circle, or like a fuzzy circle, I can't remember, but either way, that it's a more controllable brush so that I can just deal with it, instead of trying to stay in those lines with those really messy ones. It's just a nightmare. But and same thing is true with the birch branches here. So I tried to do my best to get in there right, but then also embrace a little bit of the handcrafted unfinishedness. So the look for this has always been almost like it's like a blue pencil drawn and then watercolored, and then kind of, I don't know, it's like faux handcrafted anyways. So I tried to keep as much of that as possible, but I also wanted to get the thing done, to be totally honest. So I didn't really agonize over whether or not I was doing everything right. By the way, I started out by doing these white birch branches, and then I look up like birch branch switch and found out that it's always like dark brown, so eventually that gets changed, which is kind of good because these branches are a little noisy, but it's kind of bad because they also stand out really well here. Trying to balance those values of his dark fur against the darker branches was just a little bit of a thing. But and then of course the dark from his not lederhosen-y type thing. I think that in this version he uses the switch to beat away the snow so people can get to their front doors more easily. That's what I'm gonna go with. Also, I know the bundle is a little more unruly than what somebody would really want, but I just wanted it to look cooler and be a little bit more fun overall. There's not much to say beyond that about the execution of this piece. I guess the only other things that I was really keeping in mind was that I try to use very limited shadowing in this style, and then the pencil is not like multiple applications. It's just like a one go kind of thing. There's a couple of lines that I got a little messy on that probably could have been redrawn, but the point is that it's not a line that's built up. It's just you draw it and then it's there, and it's going to look like a pencil, and it's not going to be refined, and that was the whole premise. The other thing I like about these Christmas pieces every year is that I get to use this song in the background, and this thing is like 19 minutes long, so instead of having to cut and do all the repeating stuff with the other tracks, I just let this thing play, and there's no way I can do a video in this style where the time lapse is as long as this track. So this is like a vacation from a recording perspective. Okay, so we get the lines done, the flats done. Now we start doing a little bit of shadowing. It's mostly done with just some soft gradients in places to separate things. We will also duplicate the lines, blur them, lower the opacity. All of these Christmas pieces have that as part of their look, but it is very reduced. It's not like a very blurry sort of AO looking line. It's just a little bit there to support it. So now, oh, there you go, there's the change to the birch branches. And now we're putting in some of this fog, and then I realize, oh, there's more changes I need to do. So I had to size them differently and play with some things. It's honestly nothing really cool to talk about, so it was just me making sure everything was lined up and getting that Merry Christmas in there with some of this blue knockback around the edges. And this here is the final piece. Just a fun Merry Christmas sort of image to go with the other three. I don't know what I'm going to do next year, but I'm happy that I managed to pull this one out this year because I do really like the way it came out. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all the things you celebrate. I hope you have a good one. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.